I thought today we could talk about what we kind of ended on last week, which is co-creation. Remember, we were talking about the things that Carolyn Miss was talking, and co-creation is a huge subject that I think is not so easily understood. And I don't know, those of you who know about Abraham and Esther Hicks also will have seen that Abraham, the entity, a channel, talks about this a lot. There's lots of Abraham books available if you're interested, or videos. You can go on YouTube. And the entity Abraham, which is, you know, I can probably best describe it as wise beings who are channeled through this woman called Esther Hicks. And those wise beings talk about co-creation a lot. But so when Esther Hicks started talking about, or Abraham, about co-creation, and Carolyn Miss did as well, years ago, it was never, I think, understood as clearly as when in one of her many multiple talks, Carolyn Miss, talks about it, and I quoted it the other day on Facebook, and she wrote, or she said, being co-creative is when you understand that every thought you have is a prayer. And I don't think in terms of prayer, so, you know, that word might not be the word that all of us would use, but we understand what she means by it. Every thought you have is an invocation, if you like, is an energy that you send out there into, you know, the atmosphere, space, you name it, in order to add your energy to whatever else is floating around there. So think of it as a prayer, think of it as you wish, makes really no difference. And she continues to say, every word you say has creative power. And you need to understand that you are the creative instrument. This is co-creation along with the universe. But the manner in which you co-create is by sending out this energy into the universe. And that is the power, she ends by saying, that is the power of your soul. So of course, if you send out, I'm going to say, thoughts filled with good energy, or you attempt to continually hone your thoughts, and of course this is also your feelings and your sensations and your perceptions, then there is one kind of energy that is being sent out by you. And if you do it differently, if you do it in a negative way, or if you speak badly to people, or you think badly of people, or you even feel badly about people but do nothing about it in your own feeling system, then you're sending that kind of energy out there. So what you are then co-creating is at best a universe that is betwixt and between. Yeah, you're not necessarily trying to do damage like that person that Lila just described, that but you are not sending out the best of your own energy. And of course, the way you co-create is to hone yourself, as we've discussed so many times in these meetings. You hone yourself more and more and more in order that the energy that you send out there through your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your sensations, your perceptions is continually better. The energy that you send out there is continually better. I had a session with a couple just before this meeting, and you know, they're working on their communication and they're doing extremely well, given that they're very young and they had some pretty major issues, but they truly have been working hard on this and are improving immensely. But one of the two frequently, and this goes to energy, frequently will misunderstand an observation. So I might observe, you look at me as though you think I am silly. I'm not saying this is so. I'm saying this is what I observe, yeah? And And yet, because I observe it to be so, it says something about what's inside of me, but it may also say something about you. Anyway, how we then communicate about that says a lot about the way our inner state of energy goes. And the fact that I see this, and it may not be so, you know, the fact that I see this, that I interpret the way you look at me, the way a person looks at me, as though they think I am silly or stupid or whatever, it says something about me and my own energy. So what I'm trying to say with that little example, we always need to watch how we are reacting to others. And remember that ultimately it's on us to maintain or to understand what is going on. We have to use our own feelings. Jung would say this, right? He spoke about any affect, any feeling you have is a red flag, because normally we look at our negative feelings more than our positive ones, right? If we have positive ones, we're not necessarily doing anything about them. We just enjoy them. But the negative ones, we think about them, we go over them, we ruminate, etc., etc. So when we have a negative feeling, in Jung's words, we should look at it as a red flag that shows us something about ourselves, and then to try and figure out what is it telling me about me, and what is it I need to hone, what is it I can improve in my own inner feeling state in order that I become a greater addition to the positive energy that exists in the universe. And by that, I'm not trying to say we all need to be thinking positively all the time. You know, what about somebody who is grieving? What about somebody who, again, another couple I saw yesterday, two members of the family had died. They were elderly, they didn't die of coronavirus, but nevertheless, it's a shock, it's pain, and all of these things doesn't mean you have to be thinking positively. You are allowed to grieve, and you are allowed to be sad or in pain and so on. But to add to the positive energy means how am I reacting to my bereavement or my pain or whatever it is that is going on inside of me. And how am I thinking about it? You know, am I thinking in victim mode, or am I thinking in the mode of what can I learn from this? As I walk through this dark tunnel, how can I begin to perhaps make things easier for myself by taking good care of myself as I go through this grieving process or this painful process? Everybody has something going on in their lives that may be creating pain of the kind of nature I'm talking about. So when I say positive energy, don't misunderstand it and think that I'm saying, oh, get rid of all this, you know, all those kinds of negative feelings and make sure that you're always thinking positively. There is something I wanted to read to you here. First of all, from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who, as you know, she's the one, we've talked about her way back in the past, and David Kessler, with that Harvard Business Review article about grief, and he brought in the 6th stage of grief. But anyway, this isn't about that. She was quoted saying a long time ago, I have this written down from something I prepared eons ago, I think, for the group in the house, the Live Your Best Life group. And she said, mankind's greatest gift, but also its greatest curse, is that we have free choice. We can make our choices built from love or from fear. So that, of course, goes also to energy. If I am afraid, and there's always something to be afraid about. Of course, now we have this big, huge thingy going on that we all know about, and that creates a lot of fear in a lot of people. But, you know, even before this thing, if I scratched into all your lives and asked a little bit, I'm sure we would all have come up with a different kind of fear. I may have mentioned years ago in one of the groups, I had a friend who, you know, a very intelligent woman, a very successful woman, successful in a number of different fields and in different countries, and well-spoken and even a very good public speaker, you would never believe what her fear was. Her fear was of winding up alone in life, alone in life. And my question to her was always, but even if it were so, don't you have the inner resources to do something about this feeling of being alone? Don't you have, or can you not begin to work on the inner resources that will give you strength should that actually ever happen? So, the way we look at our fears has a lot to say about how we add to the positive energy or not. And it is so often a question of this choice that we make about what we're going to do regarding love or fear. Do we look at the world we're living in with love, or do we look at the world we're living in with fear? And it's a daily choice. And going on with that, we can say, yes to life and all that life brings with it. Life brings with it many things that are not so pleasant. And I think Abraham, in one of the books or in one of the talks, there was a time where I did a lot of Abraham reading and listening, says something like, if you humans were not born into a world where you have a whole lot of stuff that you don't like, right? Even though what you would like is to have a world where all that stuff that you don't like isn't there, so that you would only have a good life, good things happening, happy things happening. The point he was making, or they were making, is if that is the world you are in, then what's the point of having come to this earth? They, of course, start out from the basic thought that you come here to learn something. So then what's the point of coming here? Because you have nothing to improve, you have nothing to grow from, right? And I personally agree with that. I think that if you had this wonderful, magical life where everything is good and there are no challenges, how would you grow? Think of children in school. How do they learn? How do they grow? They grow by being given challenges, and the challenges are, okay, this year you've got to study the history of blah blah, or the geography of such and such, and you have to learn how to comprehend essays of certain a kind of magnitude from the point of view of the cognition that you bring to the comprehension of the essays. And then at the end of the year, or several times throughout the course of the year, you will be tested on this kind of knowledge and growth. And those challenges, those tests, are equivalent or analogous to the tests we have in life, except for the fact that, of course, the tests we have in life aren't paper and pencil, or doing it on a computer, being tested on a computer, but they are. We have to deal with emotions, we have to deal with other people, we have to deal with difficult situations, and we have to deal with pain and suffering. And we don't like that. And of course, I don't like it either. All I'm saying is, this is, I wonder if there is anybody you can think of, and if there is, please tell me who that person is, that doesn't have challenges in their life and that doesn't have to figure out how to grow. And we come back to my age-old examples of always, Viktor Frankl and Nelson Mandela and Christopher Reeve and Frank, people of that nature who had enormous challenges and made something of those challenges in order to add to the positive energy of the universe. In other words, to co-create, the way Carolyn Miss put it. So of course, when we grow and learn from our experiences, we're also passing those tests in this analogous language, and we're growing from our experience, and we're growing spiritually. And to grow spiritually, I assume that is of interest to you if you are listening to these talks, because that really is what it is all about, especially now where we see the world as we knew it. Right now, anyway, it's not there. And will it come back? We don't know. How will it come back? We also don't know. So in the meantime, is it not a good thing if we make the most of this time and learn, teach ourselves, learn how to add the most to this energetic soup that is out there, that will in some fashion add to how the world could become. Yes, could become. Remember, you probably all read about some years ago, I believe it was the transcendental meditation people that did huge experiments in major cities of having, you know, large numbers of people meditating over a certain period of time, focused on any of these major cities, in order to see if that would influence crime in those cities. And you can probably look this up. You know, TMI studies on the effect of meditation on, you know, criminal behavior. In each of those cities that these experiments were done in, the rate of crime, murder, stabbings, rapes, all of those kinds of things went down dramatically when this kind of meditation took place. I never knew, I never read why somebody didn't decide, okay, let's do more of this, or let's do this continually, or let's figure out a way of doing this continually and see, you know, if over a period of time, as opposed to just a weekend, or I don't know how many nights they did it, we can have an impact on the world. But that shows us very clearly that there is an impact being had. Look how you feel if you go into a crowded cocktail party. I don't care how beautiful it is and in what a wonderful, you know, 5-star hotel somewhere it might be, with people dressed in the best designer clothes, and oh my God, their hair, and they had it done in Jonqueras or wherever they went, and their makeup, and the men with their wonderful suits and watches, and, you know, everybody's looking just magnificent. But you know that when you walk into an atmosphere like that, you have certain kinds of feelings. Some of them might be, wow, this is really exciting. But some of them might also be, oh my God, you know, everybody's really competing here, or this is really about who's got the most power. Power being described in many different ways, of course, you know, the power of influence and money, or youth, or beauty, or expensive clothing, or you name it. Or think of the kind of atmosphere you walk into a crowded mall. Yeah, that's a whole other kind of atmosphere. And now think about the kind of atmosphere you are in if you're in an ashram or in some kind of a silent retreat. So in all of these situations, we are aware of this atmosphere. Well, this atmosphere is, of course, the energy, the vibration. We know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But co-creation is about creating a kind of energy that would be more, I was going to say advantageous, and that kind of sounds materialistic, but anyway, would be more positive for our world. If we had that kind of a world, do you think we would have some of the people that are currently in leading positions politically, in corporations, etc.? Do you think we would have the kind of inequality we have, where the 1% owns more, the one top percent owns more than the bottom, I don't know, 60% or whatever it is? And do you think we would have climate change happening as it is, etc., etc.? There was a very interesting article recently in the New York Times. It was very American, but it doesn't matter. The example is good. And it talked about how back in the 50s or even the 40s, in American towns, there were public schools, and you know, the American public schools means they're free. You don't pay anything. And they're, nowadays, if you go to a public school, it's looked down upon, whereas, and if you go to a private school, that's the thing to do. But in those days, public schools were extremely good, and you got an extremely good education. And not only that, out of the public school system came the scientists and authors and artists and politicians and inventors, and all manner of people that made the country a better place. In those days, it was possible to move upward. There was this upward mobility in society. It was another kind of world. And what the world has become to a great degree is the haves and the have-nots. And you know, I want my parcel of life to be better than anybody else's. It's not that I don't want you to have anything, but you know, I'm going to make sure I have what I need for me, and hopefully a whole lot more than what I need. So the energy has changed, yeah? And this energy, if you go back into the Middle Ages, where you had feudal, or before the Middle Ages, you had feudal kings and serfs. And then, of course, you began to have uprisings, and later on you had revolutions, and you know, we can go through this throughout history. But we have now a population that is greatly more conscious than probably any previous world population, in part thanks to things like this internet, where you can get so much information, and in part thanks to groups of this nature that meet and talk about things of what we're talking about, and people being aware of the fact that they can indeed have an influence on all these things. So you have to remember that when you are not in that aware state, when you are in a more disconnected state, you're probably going to be acting from your lower self and from fear, as opposed to love or even acceptance. And of course, then you don't learn the lessons that you're supposed to be learning, and then you just get to have the same experiences over and over again. We've talked about this with regards to relationships, you know, where you keep repeating relationship patterns. Well, that's a little bit of the same, because if you don't learn in one relationship and you get rid of it, you divorce or whatever you do, and then you have another one, and essentially the same thing happens, even though when you met that person and you fell in love, it felt like something very, very different. Now, I want to read to you something from Wayne Dyer, because as usual, we might wind up running out of time, and this Wayne Dyer thing is quite interesting. He speaks about the field of intention, and remember, what you intend can be very different from what you're actually saying. So let's say I look at your very beautiful dress, and let's say I am extremely jealous, not only of your dress, but you know, your lovely body, and you wear it so beautifully, etc., etc. And I say, what a beautiful dress. My intention is what's going on inside of me, not the words that I've just said. So my words are polite. I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to be courteous, hopefully. I hope that's why it's being said. But if my feelings inside are not like that, of course, the intention that is going out there is not a positive intention, because I'm having those other feelings. So anyway, so he talks about the field of intention, and which is kind of also the universe. And he says, Wayne Dyer, what separates you from it are the concerns and the worries of daily life. So if you link back to intention, where you want to raise this universal energy, so you link back to this intention and keep the link clear and transparent and clean, so you never lose your connection to that intention, which means you're always going to be aware of your inner intention before you speak or act. But he goes on to say, when it's not clean, when your link to that is not clean, then you will believe, rather than recognizing your eternal link to the field of intention and co-creation, you will believe that you are, and of course this comes from the ego, that you are what you do, and you are what you have, and you are your reputation, and you are separate from everyone else. And of course, as long as you believe all those things, and also that you are separate from your source, it means that you can't co-create. There isn't that cleanliness in the link back to the field of intention, to the field of co-creation, because you are believing that you are your ego. It's, you know, it's as simple as that. Now, Wayne Dyer quoted in quite a few of his seminars and talks, this guy that I had never heard of until Wayne Dyer spoke of him when I first listened to one of these talks. This guy called Troward is a surname. Anyway, I don't think he's that important, but the quote is very interesting. The law of flotation was not discovered by contemplating the sinking of things. So the law of flotation means they figured out how to float boats. Yes, so how they could keep a boat on the surface of the water and get it somewhere. The law of flotation, so the boat wouldn't sink. And the quotation says, that was not discovered by thinking about why things sink, right? If I throw my mobile into the water, it will not float, it will sink, and I will be very unhappy. Or if I throw my jacket into the water, same thing. So if I think about, all these things, you know, submerge and eventually stay down to the bottom. If I think about that kind of thing, I'm not going to be able to figure out how to make something that floats on the surface of the water. And that analogy is perfect for what we're talking about here. If I am connected to my ego and I am thinking about how I get ahead of others and constantly comparing myself to others and working on getting ahead as opposed to being kind, compassionate, loving, which doesn't mean I can't live comfortably. Okay, this isn't about going out and throwing away your shoes and walking around barefoot and begging for food. This is not at all what this is about. But it is about recognizing your connection to everything else, this intermingling of molecules. And if you are coming from the ego, it's like thinking that everything you put in the water will sink. So if you're coming from the ego, you cannot possibly figure out how to increase the energy of the universe, the energy of the world, with your particular participation, because your participation is going to be a sinking participation, if I can use the analogy, right? So Dyer says, remember that you are divine and not separate. We're all spiritual beings, as Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit priest, we're all spiritual beings having human experiences. Not a bunch of humans that all of a sudden have figured out how to be a little bit spiritual. So feeling good, says Dyer, is the best way to maintain the link between you and the divine, or the source, or this clean universe. And as you already know, feeling good comes from loving and caring for the self. So feeling good, which sounds like anathema to a lot of people, just like loving the self sounds like a sinful thing to a lot of people. Feeling good means that your energy is very high. I'm not feeling good because I took the last piece of cake and didn't let you have any. I'm not feeling good because I stole your wonderful car in such a way that nobody can tell that I stole it and ha ha ha, I got away with it and now I get to drive this gorgeous car. Or I'm not feeling good because I destroyed your reputation and made mine grow. I know these are all kind of very lowly things and furthermore, not typical things that people will do. But I want to make the point that these are not the things that make us feel good. What makes us feel good is when we are at peace inside, when we have figured out how to be at peace inside all the time, all day long. And we are caring for ourselves and loving ourselves, because the more we do that, the more we are able to give out there. And the more we are able to add to this positive energy in the world. So just to quickly finish here, because let me just see how much time left. There's always something on top of the time. We've got 5 minutes left. When you feel bad, you lose your connection to source. So when you're feeling jealous, when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling fearful, when you're feeling frustrated, when you're feeling worried, when you're feeling stressed, all of those feelings make you lose your connection to source. And especially if you feel bad about your own life, but you can also feel bad about the situations of others. I can feel so sorry for something that somebody is going through. And as I've often mentioned, that doesn't make things better for them. Or I can feel sorry about the kids who are dying of hunger in Yemen and those horrible camps in Yemen and in Syria and the cold they went through this winter in the midst of coronavirus. And then there's bouts of contagion in the camps. Pregnant mothers giving birth to children in those circumstances. And of course, this feeling bad for them, we have been taught that it is a charitable way of being. That doesn't help anybody. And this is not a lack of empathy that I'm expressing here. It doesn't help anybody because your energy is being lowered as you feel these ways, and therefore you contribute to the lowering of the energy of the universe. So what you can do when you are tempted to feel bad about situations of that nature, or just your neighbor who's going through a really hard time in her or his own life, when you're tempted to feel bad, instead of feeling bad, ask yourself, okay, what can I do to increase my own equanimity, my own inner harmony, in order to contribute to the raising of the energy of the universe, as opposed to lowering my own, which then in turn lowers the energy of the universe. So when you feel bad, you create resistance and disbelief about being able to create something. And with that, you create more negative emotions, and your negative emotions attract negative events to your life. And so therefore, when you feel negative emotions, you can use it as a red flag that is telling you, hey, you got to do something here. Negative emotions are not doing you or your life any good, and certainly not any good to the contribution that you might give the universe. There is a little point I want to finish with by also Carolyn Myss, which she calls her principles of co-creation. And I don't remember which of her talks or books I got this from. All I can tell you, it was Carolyn Myss. And her principles of co-creation: thoughts create reality. Thoughts create reality. People, of course, latch on to that and say, okay, if I think about becoming rich, I will become rich. I make a vision board. I will, accomplish what's on that vision board. And to a degree, that is true. But it is not just that. And that is looking at a very tiny, tiny element of what is meant by thoughts creating reality. Choices create consequences, of course. And you make choices all day long. So if I'm thinking about, that person over there that I'm angry about, or this other one that I'm jealous about, or that other one that I feel really sorry for, guess what? All those choices that I made to feel that way create negative feelings that are not going to do the addition to positive energy of the universe any good. She refers to the law of magnetic attraction, which is a very important law, like the law of regular attraction, but magnetic attraction between vibrancy, frequencies, human beings. She says every thought, every emotion that goes on within you needs to be considered a choice and an act of creation. Every thought, every emotion that you have inside of you needs to be considered a choice and an act of creation. I think when you get that, and you really want to apply it to your life, is where you really start making changes. She also says, make no judgments, have no expectations. And the Buddhists, of course, say this. And this is a hard one. Separate yourself, distance yourself from your desire, detach yourself from your desire for any given outcome. Give up the need to know why things happen as they do. Be self-responsible and be aware of the fact that co-creation happens in a cycle. Anyway, all those points of hers, each would require a separate chat. But I hope the main point here, which is really that one sentence of hers that I read both at the beginning from another talk and here, every thought, every emotion that goes on within you needs to be considered a choice and an act of creation. So that is sort of the main statement I wanted to make in today's meeting.